Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about some of the miracle stories that are happening right here in our own city, in our own state, every day. My name is Tony Kausha, and the title of our show is Tony's 50,000 Coincidence Miracles. Please note, this show is not about religion, and we're not trying to change anyone's religion, and we're not trying to get you to join any religion. It's just about miracle stories. I don't know of any religion on the planet that doesn't talk about miracles. That's why religions begin, because they have something that's telling them there's really a God. But we're not going to get into that. We're going to just talk about miracles and leave the decisions about all that up to you. So we don't care what religion you are. We just want to talk about miracles. If you are an atheist, I think you'll enjoy the program as well, although I can't guarantee you'll remain an atheist very long after you hear many convincing stories, coincidence kinds of stories about miracles. You can email me your own stories if you wish. We'll try to use all we can on the show. I can't guarantee we will, depending on volume and time, but you're welcome to send your stories on to us, and we will mention them when we can. You can send them to the following email address. But please notice that if we do use your story, we won't mention your name. We'll keep you anonymous. And we suggest that in your story, when you send it to us, don't use your correct name. That way anyone listening will not be able to figure out that it was you that sent the story in. The email address you can send your stories to is very easy to remember. It consists of 2 words and 3 numbers. The first word is Tony, spelled Tony, and the second word is and, spelled A-N-D, and the numbers are 777. So once again, the name is Tony and 777 at AOL.com. Well, let us begin. Our first coincidence miracle today has to do with a woman who tells us that she was very close to her dad for many years. He passed away at the age of 80 years old. And on the day that he passed away, while she was sleeping that night, she was positive that she heard him calling her name in the middle of the night. And she just coincidentally noticed the clock at the time was 2:20 in the morning. The next day, when she was having breakfast with her son, the son said, "Geez, I had a strange thing happen last night. I heard Grandpa calling your name in the middle of the night, and I looked at the clock, and it was 2:20 in the morning." Now, this is a case where the mother never mentioned the story, never mentioned that she heard her name being called, and the son just brings it up the next day. So these are obvious cases where God inspires us to speak things, to say things. We get ideas in our minds to say things to each other because God is trying to tell us amazing things. So if the son did not share what he was inspired to say, the woman would never know that the son was hearing her name being called at the same time in the morning. And if she had not looked at the clock, she would not have known it was exactly at 2:20. So that's an amazing coincidence miracle. Another thing that happened was on the same night, the son related, after they shared that story, he shared that he came downstairs to the kitchen to get something like milk or something in the middle of the night. And as he was passing by the doorway to the living room, he said he could swear that he saw his grandfather, who had just passed away, and they had the funeral that day. But he could swear that he saw his grandfather sitting in the sofa that he always sat in the same position that he was when he fell asleep watching television. He would be in a certain slumped position, and he was sharing that with his mom, that he had this experience too. But he said he became frightened by what he thought he was seeing, and he went quickly up to his room, and he said now that he heard her story about 2:20 in the morning, that he's sorry that he didn't linger longer and see what else possibly could have happened, that he had seen a miraculous thing, that he saw his father in the sofa, and he said it looked like it was real life. It didn't look like a dream. It looked like he was really actually there. And I've heard many stories like this in my life from other people who say their loved ones pass away, and then they do see them somewhere in a car or off at a park somewhere, or they do see them in their house sometimes. And then, sadly, the mother was sharing that her son also passed away, and the mother was certainly grief-stricken, and it wasn't too long after that her father had passed away, so it was a double negative and hard to cope with. And she was so touched by it, she asked God to please show her a sign that her son was okay. And you know, that's a common thing when we lose somebody. We want to make sure they're okay. We're worried about them, and certainly a mother worries about her son. And she asked God for that, and while she was asking, she saw this beautiful bird appear on the back porch. And it occurred to her that they had never seen birds on the back porch. I don't know why that is, but they've never seen birds on the back porch. And as soon as she asked, this bird arrived and apparently looking in the window. And so she decided to put a bird feeder outside in commemoration of this sign that she just received. And she says every day about the same time, pretty close to the same time, a bird arrives at the bird feeder, and it's a clear sign to her. She's convinced that her son is okay, and she's convinced that God has given her this great gift, that she had the inspiration to get the bird feeder. Otherwise, she might not be seeing this, but she had the inspiration because she saw the bird on the porch on that particular day. I have to tell you that I really enjoy sharing these miracle stories with people every week, and especially when I'm out handing out cards about the 2 books I wrote. I've experienced many miracles, and I wrote 2 books. Each book has 100 miracle stories that I've personally experienced in my life. And to get the feedback from people who send emails or who know me, who call me and approach me and tell me about miracles they're experiencing because they read one of our books or they listened to some of these radio shows, is such a very rewarding experience for me. And I share that with you because I want to let everybody know, if you're doing something for God like this, if you're trying to help people experience God in their own lives because you've experienced God, God always rewards you. And I could say that not just based on my experience, but historically and even what the Bible says. So we're always rewarded by trying to help people become a friend of God. Our next coincidence miracle has to do with one day I was handing out cards about the 2 books I wrote. I was at a park, and I do that often. I go to public places where I can do this comfortably, where I don't disturb people, but they appreciate getting a card that tells them about miracle stories, and it's on a website where it doesn't cost them anything. They can go to the website anytime they want and listen to stories for free. So I spent several hours doing that, and I was pretty tired, and I was inspired it was time to leave. So I started to leave, packed up the car, and I drove off. And as I was on my way home, I passed by another park, and I got inspired to stop. And I pulled over and prayed about it because I was a little tired, and it was very unusual that God would ask me to stop now. It was kind of late in the day. But I was inspired that, as I often am, I'm often inspired when I'm led to do something, that there's somebody there that needs to hear about the book. And I get that often, I mean really often. And when I do it, I find out, sure enough, somebody was there. So I went to that second park. I parked my car. I took a few books with me, and I took my cards with me, and I walked toward the park where the people were. And as I was walking toward, I saw a young mother with a baby, and I asked about the baby. The baby was 7 months old. And I said, hello, how are you? Here's a card. I wrote a book, and I give you a card. And most people say yes. Now, they may throw the card away, I don't know, but most people don't mind just taking a card about the book. And she said, "What's it about?" So she took a few minutes and asked some questions. She wanted to know what it was about. And when I explained it to her, that true miracle stories, I've had 54 years of miracles every day. And the books explain how we can have mental telepathy discussions with God anytime we want. And the book explains how to do that. And the book proves that 10,000 saints in history have all done that before us. So it's highly possible to have mental telepathy messages with God. We can have conversations anytime we want. Well, her eyes got a little watery, and she told me that she was just leaving the park, and she was there trying to get de-stressed because she was having a lot of stress right now, and she was praying for wisdom, and she had never heard about mental telepathy with God, and she was fascinated about what the book's prospects were, and I had a copy available, so I, right on the spot there, gave her a free copy and autographed it, and she was delighted and very thankful, and I'm looking forward to her writing to us after she reads it. The next thing that happened at the same park that I went to, now this was my second park for the day, I was inspired to approach, the first person I approached was someone who was putting their blanket down, and so the same thing happened as with the first person. I asked them if they'd like a card. I wrote a book. They started asking questions. They were so fascinated. I told them basically the same thing I had just told the other woman, mental telepathy with God and asking God questions. And the two words, idea and inspiration, are the key words that tell us that God is talking to us when we get ideas and inspirations. Well, this man honestly had a tear coming down his cheek, and I was inclined, and I thought I would ask him about it. But before I got a chance, with his lips trembling a little bit, he said to me, he was a young man, and he had a baby that looked to be like 2 or 3 years old on the blanket there with him. And he told me that he just arrived, and he came here with his son, and he's a single parent at the moment, and he's having such trouble. He's a young man. He's having trouble getting a decent job and taking care of his son, and it's all new to him, and it's very difficult for him, and he's been praying for help. And as he was driving over here, he said, I must tell you, I kept saying to God as I was coming over here, "Dear God, I need a miracle. Dear God, I need a miracle." And I was saying that several times in the car on the way over here. And now you walk over as soon as I get here, and you're telling me you wrote a book about 50,000 miracles, and the book explains how we can have miracles every day. He said, I'm all choked up, and I had another copy of a book, so I signed it over to him, autographed it, and I'm looking forward to his comments as well. But there's two cases of, I was told to come to the second park at the end of the day. I couldn't believe God wanted me to do that, and I stumbled on two people immediately. As I indicated earlier, sometimes I'm inspired that God tells me to go somewhere because there's someone there that needs to hear about the two books. And here were two people at that second park. In like a 20-minute period, I spoke to two people, and they both have copies of our book. And, if you read the books, and if you've been listening to these radio shows, you know that there's proof and evidence in each book that God inspired both books. The next coincidence miracle was on the way out after I had finished that park, and I was leaving. I went to one more blanket and handed a card to the mom and told her the same thing I just told the other two people. She was excited about the book and very interested, and said she would Google it. And she had a 15-year-old daughter there, and I was inspired to ask the daughter if she had any miracles in her life. She's 15 years old, and she said, "Yes, I was listening intently to what you said, because one day I had a thought in my mind to look out the window for a black squirrel, and as soon as I looked out the window, I really saw a black squirrel run by." So what you're saying about having inspirations and ideas, I know myself, it did happen to me. I got an idea, I got an inspiration to look out the window for a black squirrel, and there it was. God bless you all. I'll talk to you next week.